Hi, good morning. Welcome to a new presentation. This presentation is called Mitochondrial DNA in African People. It's number 19 in the series, of which I started at the beginning of human history, and I'm kind of working my way forward in time, trying to get to the present day. And I'm only really concerned with beginning with Africa, of course, and then with Western civilization. Um, if you don't understand Africa and the primitive beliefs, then you understand very little of the beginnings, and you got to give false information, like a lot of people do. Um, like using words such as pagan and so forth. I consider those kind of words degrading to the people who um, we took the beliefs from, right? So it's disrespectful to them to use words like that, because really all beliefs and religion originated in Africa, and they brought it out of Africa. And really, we got to stick to the facts that the earliest people are everybody else's ancestors. So this presentation is about the haplogroups of the female line, the mitochondrial DNA, starting with L, which is Eve, and then moving through to L6, all found in Africa, and then L3, of course, is the haplogroup that's found in the outer Africans and all of us. And then it also goes into the migrations of these people around Africa, and then the people that these haplogroups are found in. So here's kind of like this is not a very good illustration of the haplogroups, but it's okay. Um, it should be moved up a little bit. The diagram should be moved up a little bit. And then we should see more of a center in Sudan rather than how this is kind of like spread out like this. L1 is actually more over here where they got L2, and uh, L5 and 6 should be up more closer to where L3 and L4 are at. But it's okay. I mean, it gives us kind of like a relative example. Okay, early Middle Stone Age human migrations. At the time of this research, there was very little evidence for any known human habitations in Southwest Asia before 140,000 years ago. It's more likely that most of the people leaving Africa to the east were leaving through the Sinai Peninsula rather than the Bab al Mandab Strait and across the Red Sea. The Middle Stone Age Gadamoto Ethiopian site seems to show that people could have been traveling back and forth from southern Egypt to Gadamoto from 185,000 years ago to 150,000 years ago. Ancient Egyptians say themselves that they came from the south, and it seems that for hundreds of thousands of years people were moving northwards in Africa from Central Africa. Early human occupation and travel of the Nile River. There's estimated to be about 4,000 generations that existed in Northeast Africa prior to the outer African L3 haplogroup people. Compare this to the number of generations since 1 AD, which is only about 80,000 generations. Our species were the dominant hominids in Africa. Africa is so vast that there would be no need to leave, and people traveled by foot, animals, or canoes for thousands of years before the Common Era. From the beginning of the White Nile to the end of it in the Egyptian Delta is about 4,000 miles. This is about the size of 2 United States put side by side from west to east. We can't even fathom the types of civilizations that existed along the White Nile for hundreds of thousands of years over this vast amount of space. I found this picture here. We can see, all the electricity along the Nile. See where it stops down here at the bottom is interesting. And then like little pockets in the deserts. Very little pockets over here in the deserts. There's no electricity at all. Yet still, in 2025, that's interesting. A lot of this area is of course uninhabited, but the parts that are inhabited, a lot of the people don't have any electricity. The beginning of mitochondrial DNA in the L1 haplogroup in Western Africa. Therefore, most of our species' human history was in Africa. The L1 genetics is one of the earliest examples of HSS, which is Homo sapiens sapiens, our species, and is found in 100% of the Aikung people or the San in southern Africa. The L1 branch was the second branch to separate from Eve, which is just L, right, in Homo. And then Harold says that the Niger-Congo people, meaning those that live along the Niger River in West Africa, would be the ones who would have any knowledge of the L1's earliest mythological and ritual beliefs. Examples of these people would be the Western Pygmies and the Nizbi people of Gabon. These people do not have any known evidence of beliefs in a creator God. So not all humans still on Earth today believe that that Earth or people were created by a God. So that tells us that these ideas were created in humans' minds later on. Okay, the religious beliefs of the L1 haplogroup Western Africans. Hard to see this, I apologize, but I'll just read it to you. They had beliefs that associated themselves with animals and the land. Nature was their religion. There was no God in their terms. They had a relationship with the earth. The use of fire, killing animals, and becoming animal eaters would be things that created beliefs in their minds. Hunting and killing animals became a ritual. They believed that they could change into an animal and that animals could change into men and that the souls of the dead could enter into animals after death. Therefore, as early as the people who had the L1 haplogroup, reincarnation like that of man, reincarnating into the snake or python, must have existed. This is called Nagualism, like Naga, the snake or serpent belief, and in the god Pan, the Greek god Pan, or any other mighty hunter like Nimrod, the Pharaoh Unis, or Anu. The hunter created a spiritual connection with the animals he hunted. These are some early, maybe 100,000 years or older, religious beliefs of Western Africans who carry the L1 haplogroup. So to the right, we see a picture here of the Niger River and the countries that it kind of flows through. And we would find people with this L1 haplogroup in this area. And then this would be supposedly some of the where some of the African Americans would come from. So it'd be interesting to know if any African Americans have the L1 haplogroup in their genes. And then when we're talking about the reincarnation in the snake or the python, we know that this belief was widespread throughout Africa and spread out of Africa into places like India and so forth. And then we know this is in Egyptian as well, because Egyptian, they have their royal symbol is of course the snake. Okay, so early East African religious beliefs. So now we go to the East. In comparison to the West, in East Africa, they were developing dualism in the body and an awareness of the natural power of the earth, such as its storms, lightning, floods, and associated it with a sacred power. These beliefs, according to Harold, are found as early as the late Achilleans culture in their symbolic behaviors. The Eastern Pygmies, the same as the Western, do not have a high god and do not perform ancestral rituals. The Niger-Congo people's DNA shows us that the beliefs that left Africa also stayed in Africa with themselves. The decision to kill and to eat meat. The L1 haplogroup people were in Western Africa, while at the same time the main group, which hadn't diverged into any of the other haplogroups, but I would just say, it's the people that would diverge from the L2 through the L6 still existed in East Africa. L1 mutated in Western Africa because it's not found in the Mbuti, Sua, or Asoa of the East. Fire seems to be one of the earliest religious types of belief that we know of, along with the decision to kill and eat meat. And Trask says that the hominids succeeded over their ancestors by becoming flesh eaters. And the decisive point was the decision to kill. Therefore, fire, killing, and eating animals are associated with some of the earliest known religious beliefs. And to the right here, we see a picture of a Mbuti person here, hunter. So try to make a little bit of sense of that. So when I'm talking about this main group from L2 through L6, so there's a main group that's in Sudan that's these haplogroups are breaking off of and migrating to other locations within Africa. So those haplogroups don't exist yet, but when they move to a new environment, then the mutation is created into their genes, and then it creates that new haplogroup, if that makes sense. So there was no L2 through L6 haplogroup yet. All the people had the same genes, but when they left when a group broke off and it left Sudan and it left through to the west to Niger, to the Niger River, after a few generations, it created that L1 haplogroup, and then that made them distinct. The spirit of the hunter and the hunted. With the killing of animals, there must have been a realization of using weapons to kill humans if it did not come prior to hunting animals. We know that chimpanzees fought their neighbors, which sometimes resulted in deaths. Trask says that most tools prior to the Aurignacian culture about 30,000 BCE reveals nothing about religious beliefs of the time. Hunting created many ideas such as that the animals had supernatural powers and that a hunting spirit protected the hunter and the prey. The hunter would become the god or lord over the animals, and man wanting to hunt helped to create a division of labor within the household. The L5 haplogroup in Sudan. The L5 was the next branch to split off the main branch at about 138,000 to 106,000 years ago. An important fact is that the main group, which would have still been the groups that didn't break off yet, L2 through 6, is centered in and around Sudan, somewhere probably near Khartoum. When we think of these later Nilo-Saharan peoples, they were below the Ethiopian highlands in the Nile River valleys of both the White and Blue Niles and controlled an area of about 350 miles on both sides of both rivers. And then what would become the Afro-Asiatics were up in the highlands themselves and farther east near the Red Sea. And then L5 is now found mostly in Central Africa, such as the Mombwa caves in Zambia. The eastern Mobutu and the Lugbara people would be the best places to look for L5 and the earliest Sudanic myths and symbolism. In the picture here to the right, we have the picture of where the why do I not have it here? The caves, the Mamba caves in Zambia. This is where the Mambang caves of Zambia are at. And these people, of course, are driven south by the Arabs. And then what's interesting here is to note that the Afro-Asiatic people, when they're up in the Ethiopian highlands, they're above, in the mountains above the Nilo-Saharan people who are down in the Nile River valleys. So from the very beginning, they're seeing themselves as above the Nilo-Saharans. And then we know that the Afro-Asiatic people are the ones who see themselves as God. But the Nilo-Saharan people didn't see themselves as God themselves. Okay, the Nile and the Sudan populating the world. Therefore, this region along the Niles was occupied by people for at least 200,000 years since the time of Eve. And it's a wonder if the splitting up of the tribe was done purposely and coordinated, because we know that even as early as chimpanzees and the gorillas, they have the ability to organize themselves. L2 through 6 are still in Sudan between 115,000 years ago to 111,000 years ago. This branch is the ancestral branch of the Nilo-Saharan and Afro-Asiatic families, the people who would leave Africa and survive on into us today. They created the tool industries and cultures of the Nubian, the Lavalas, Mousterian, and the Altarian cultures. The first out of Africans. The people of this group's religious beliefs remain quite the same as with the animal spirits and nature, but also included the forest, which were thought to have life and be the source of the animal spirits, and now beliefs related to death began to be seen for the first time. This is the time when the Nubian complex is thriving, and is known that the Nubian complex sites were specifically chosen for hunting, and therefore they were coordinated sites. So they're moving around picking these sites and then settling there, for seasonally or whatever, specifically to hunt. So they're coordinating their migration patterns. This Nubian complex, we talked about this in some previous videos. This Nubian complex is coordinating, sending out colonies. I mean, I don't know if colony is probably not the right word, because there might not have been other people where they went and chose their sites, but they're leaving from a center, and they're going and choosing specific sites, and then they're staying there, and they're spreading out around the East Africa and Western Asia. So they have a coordinated pattern, like an empire, like kind of like a earliest type of empire colonization. So this is already found more than 100,000 years ago. So the research is becoming more and more on this, and it's going to continue to get developed. But what I think that they're going to find that these Nubian Sudan people are already expanding out like an empire across East Africa and West Asia. The L2 haplogroup. The next split from the main group is the L2 haplogroup, dated between 104,000 to 88,000 years ago. At about 100,000 years ago, they moved westward through the Sahara, the region around Lake Chad. The genes of L2 can be found today in the Mabuti and the Tuaregs people in Mali, and in the Berbers in Tunisia. Later they spread out from around Lake Chad. Anthropomorphic beliefs in the Nubian complex. The early Middle Stone Age Central Africans used red and yellow sandstone, worked stone, and created anthropomorphic images, meaning they gave animals and other objects human characteristics. So I highlighted this because it's important to not switch it around. Even I said, and other people might say, when they make this mistake when they look at the Egyptian religion and said, "Oh, humans are using these they're adopting these animal images, right? But they're mixing it around because we know that from the earlier people, they're giving the animals human characteristics. So you see here to the right a picture of Sebek, the Egyptian god Sebek. He has human arms and legs, but he's a crocodile. So he's given the people are giving him human arms and legs, not the other way around. These early people who carried the L5 haplogroup and were found in the Sudan and Central Africa may be found in the Nubian complex. These people, of course, spread to Arabia, Oman, and India about 100,000 years ago. And then I think eventually died out. That gene pool died out, which is why they don't. Uh, which is why there's a separate out of African group. Harold says that the Anuak people are the earliest Nilo-Saharan speakers still alive today. The Nubian complex is a pre-Nilo-Saharan culture from the upper middle Nile Valley of Sudan. If you haven't watched any of my previous research, Nilo-Saharan just means people who live on the Nile River and in the Saharan Desert. The L3 and the L4 haplogroups. Now only L3, L4, and 6 are left in the main group in East Africa, meaning they haven't split yet into these haplogroups, and they are all still found together approximately 85,000 years ago in Sudan. L3 and L4 separated from each other about 83,000 years ago, and their fossils have been found in the Sinai Peninsula and in the Negev Desert in Palestine, where the huts or houses are like the Nilo-Saharans, Berta Gamuz people, and the Cushitic Oromo people in Ethiopia. And so this shows us that really the Nilotic or Nile River people and the Afro-Asiatics are really brothers because they were together before they broke up. These cultures were not only Nubian but also Mousterian. And L3 and L4 are only Nilo-Saharan and Afro-Asiatic, and they diverged from each other about 3,000 years later. So at about 80,000 years ago, which is where Herod produces his out-of-African date. Haplogroups L3, 4, and 6. L6 diverges later, probably from L3, somewhere in eastern Ethiopia or in Yemen or Arabia, about 20,000 years ago. So way later, L6 is diverging in Yemen or Arabia. I don't know why I don't have specific on that. I guess I didn't see that in Herod's research. But that can be addressed by somebody else later on. I'm not really concerned, aside from knowing the original and first locations. I'm not really concerned too much about what's happening in Arabia later, aside from that Arabs are then later moving in all back migration into East Africa and just totally dominating and moving the original peoples south. And why, and considering that that's the original Christian homeland of beliefs and the original center of our ancestors, why that was allowed to happen and take place. I would say is um, planned, probably planned to get rid of the earliest Christian foundational beliefs, and that's kind of why um, that also happened with the dams that were created, um, that flooded the Nubian, where the Nubians were, and now all that archaeological archaeological evidence is underwater now, which is unfortunate. Luckily, they got some of it, but uh, we know, and I know that the earliest foundational Christian beliefs start at the top of the White Nile and move their self down the Nile, and with the help of, with this kind of research, spreading it, it's gonna get the word out. Um, okay, we're L3 exited out of Africa through the Sinai, and most of the L4 genes are found in the Nilotics, like the Nuers and Akolis in the Afro-Asiatics, like the Hamar tribe and the Yaku Kushites, Kenyans, and the Tigray. We talked a little bit about that in the previous video. I was surprised that the Tigray had this Neolotic, had these Neolotic genes, because I was under the impression that they were separate, but that's my mistake. L4 are natives to the eastern Sudan and East Africa, while the L3 are native to the Nile Valley in the west, all the way to Lake Chad. And in the Nubian complex sites of Egypt that date from 84,000 to 65,000 years ago. Early L3 branches are also found in the Omo Basin, and the haplogroups M and N are branches of the L3 people who were moving north into the Sinai and Palestine. All that is important to understand. You have to just read that again to get a better understanding of what's being said there. That's very important. So just read it again for yourself. To the left here, we have a picture of a Nuer, Nilotic person, in Sudan. And I really like these pictures because I can see now. You see how he's standing, and we showed this in the Shilluk people in my previous video of the parents of Ra, and they stand like this too. And then, so you know what this shows? This shows that if you got the Horus, you take the Sharek statue of the hawk symbol of Horus, so that's the hawk perched on the Shirak, like the foundation or block, and the hawk is on top as a statue. And that's what that That's what I think, and I'm pretty positive is where it comes from, is these Nubian warriors, these Sudan, Nilo-Saharan people standing like this. That's where they take it from. So you have a hawk is actually perched on a T, right? Like a standard T, or like a a tribe has a totem. Tribes have their totem, and you would make it a T, and you put the hawk on top as your totem symbol of your people, and you're showing him standing here on one leg, and we know that birds, they will sometimes stand like that. Hawks or eagles or parrots or different types of birds, like you see in the uh, pirates, pirate symbols and stuff. They have a parrot and it's standing on one leg or it's perched. And you're seeing this Christian symbol of a T, which is just the standard of two pieces of wood and with the hawk on top of it. And it's just the king would be standing like this, and maybe to make himself higher when he's addressing his people, he's jumping up on top of a rock or something else and standing like that and speaking to his people. And then later, when um, they had statues and they were able to make stone statues and chisel out these shareks, or I don't know how to pronounce it, blocks. And then the Egyptians had the ability to chisel out that foundation and put a Horus on the top of it, the hawk on top of those statue. And then you see in the Anu people a symbol in the hieroglyphs. It becomes a sharek with the actual cross, normal cross, on top of it. Um, okay, the highest percentage of haplogroups found in the people today. So the highest percentages found in people today of each mitochondrial haplogroup, according to Harold's research, is as follows. L0 is in the Toga Nilotic people in Tanzania, and it's 56% of their DNA. And then in the L1, the highest percentage is found in the Egyptians, and it's in 25%. It makes up 25% of their DNA. And then we know L. This is interesting when I came across this, because I did this research a long time ago. So it's interesting that it's found in the Egyptians, and then we discussed earlier that it's found in the Niger Congo people of Western Africa. So they moving west from Sudan to Niger Congo, and then they're moving north into Egypt, and it's making up the majority of the DNA in the Egyptians. So I'm assuming this is the native Egyptians, even though Arabs now, after several generations, would be native Egyptians. I don't know if they're taking it from black Egyptians and Nubians Egyptians, or if they're taking that DNA from the Arabs, or if it's all together and it's found in all of them with that percentage. But that would be interesting to know. L2, the Afar is the highest concentration is found in the Afar of Ethiopia at 36%, and then in L3 it's found in the Kanuri in Nigeria, and Chad. It makes up 66%, and this would be the best representatives of the out of African people. So if we wanted to know what our ancestors looked like who first left Africa and we took their DNA from it, we should you can look at these Kanuri people and you would have an example. The L4, the highest concentration is found in the Gumuz in West Ethiopia and East Sudan at 24%. And then the L5 is found in the Anuak in the Nuer in South Sudan at 15%. And then L6 is found in the Yemeni people at 24%. All right, that's it. And for the bibliography, of course, Herod's work. I chose Herod's work because my unique, everybody's unique on how they think. And Herod's research stood out to me as I wanted to use his research, and it was just unique. It was just unique compared to others, and I just found it fascinating. And I even messaged him one time and let him know, and he was like, "Oh, that's my old research," and he's working on new stuff or whatever. But I just found it just very helpful for my research, and that's why I used it. And that's how this is all mostly, this presentation is all mostly from him, so give him his credit. And then we have I'm not going to name all these other people, but there's just from the this second source here is for the wasn't mentioned in this research, but the Y male chromosome. Uh, th- their research is what identified the male Y chromosome coming from West Africa instead of East Africa. And then Tarsk, William Trask, and Mercia Elaid for the history of religious ideas. That shows the meat eating part of this presentation comes from him and his explanation of how he thinks that that's the change and the decisive moment of change in the religious beliefs of humans, which is super interesting and these deserves more attention. And then of course Christopher Ehret, I've already mentioned many times before, and he just helps us just to get a better understanding of the Afro-Asiatic people and the Nilo-Saharan people in general, which is we can't really get a good understanding until we know that that until we recognize them. All right, and that's it for this one. Thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good day.